We want to talk about how race has been used, I think, as a divide and conquer tool, and how race plays itself out in media.
There is a digital archive of blackness that exists that is unprecedented. There are images of blackness that are highly legible to us, right? So if we see a welfare mom, if we see a black man with a basketball, right, we immediately know what that is. And of course, the really good art makers at this point in time, whether we're talking about television or film or even music, have the capacity to take those kind of stock images and offer some complexity to them that gives us a mode of thinking.
I think a lot of our visual culture is essentially for passive consumption. But then there's art, which is entirely about getting into your head and disturbing you greatly. So there's passive consumption where stereotypes have, I think, their most dangerous effect. And then there's active consumption where stereotypes are always going to be slightly disabled. I think films like that should come with a different kind of rating. Like R, PG-13. There should be a sort of AR rating, for anti-racist people, or people who are prepared to watch it, right. Who have understood the parameters of the cultural literacy problem. How do you create art for people where the future is questionable? And in fact, if American capitalism has reached the point where millions of people are no longer needed, how do you produce art for that sense of dislocation? The viewer has to be extremely aware of some of these dynamics, because I think if you try to watch things like Precious or The Wire passively, I think then you fall in all the traps.
If you are a young black woman who is dealing with, in that environment, dealing with abuse that you have no other place to talk about, that there is a power to see a film about a young black girl who is being abused that might give you language to express something that we really don't do too well in handling in terms of our community, and certainly is rarely approached in terms of visual media. This respectability issue is something that we have been dealing with since emancipation in this country, about how black people are supposed to be presented. Which black people are eligible to represent the race? Who is supposed to lift us up, and then when we get there, who's gonna reach down? I'm more interested in developing a sense of literacy about them. Language that is really nuanced about intersectionality and poverty and class and race, that allow us to have conversations that are more productive and fruitful, rather than why can't we have positive movies around black people? I meet young people all the time who were like, well, where's the next Malcolm? Where's the next Martin Luther King? Well, if you're looking for someone who is uncomplicated, or necessarily straight, or hyper-masculine, or never had an affair, or never smoked weed, or never had he's not anywhere. She's not anywhere, because we're not creating a space for people that is real, that allows them to have faults. We want deities, not human beings.
Within the media industry, we have a lot of challenges that, on the one hand, we have respectability within our communities and worries about how we're going to be represented. And certainly within the Latino community around Big Pun, there was a real dislike of Liza Rios, a real distancing that happened, right? And then on the other hand, we have the question of how do we get even into the mainstream media? How do we get our stories told there at all? And when we do, which ones get selected? Who tells them? How do they tell them? Is there any nuance? Is there a character that we can actually believe in there? One of the big issues that I think we face as journalists, trying to cover communities in an honest way, is the fact that there are fewer and fewer people of color in positions of power in newsrooms. And that, in my opinion, has direct consequences as far as the way communities of color are depicted. Being
the only African-American teacher at the time at University of Illinois in art, and actually the first to get tenure in the School of Art and Design in art at that particular institution, I found that it was problematic that people were going through there not thinking about images critically, and not thinking about the context critically. And so the powerful nature of Ntozake Shange's choreo poem was the fact that it talked about beautifully and brilliantly about these ideas around intersectional identities. Think about being a white man and dealing with those images. Think about being someone from Korea dealing with those images and actually never having to deal with those ideas. And think about the visibility of the African American woman in media at the time, and those types of things. And also these ideas around agency. And also at the same time, think about if you are an African American woman in that class, how do you speak about those particular types of issues? And so those particular things become really problematic during and beautifully problematic too, because honestly, I don't think you're learning unless you're uncomfortable.